Kendall, you're muted.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. We're gonna be having a cinematic combo about the movie Roma. And we're happy if you were able to join us today. To start, I guess everyone can say their name and their position on the leadership team. I'll start. I'm Kendall Ricks, and I'm assistant director of the Pegasus Film Festival for this year.
Hi, my name is Janelle Frazier, and I'm this year's lead photographer.
Hello, my name is Hannah Lee, and I'm the social media manager.
So I guess to start, I'll just say a little bit about why I thought this movie would be such a good movie to talk about. I just remember when I first watched it, just the emotions I felt. I think it just is such a powerful film. I heard about it through like the critical acclaim and the Oscar nominations and stuff, but I didn't expect for it to make me feel so deeply. And I just got so engrossed in the story. And I also think like as Americans, sometimes we get into our own bubbles and we only consume media from our culture and what we're familiar with. And I think like the beautiful thing about um, consuming media from other cultures and other languages is that it reminds us of our shared experience as humans and shows us how much, stories can be relayed through these things that cross cultural boundaries. So I just thought that was so beautiful. Um, and I just think it's like such a visually stunning film as well. But to start, I'd like to ask everyone just their general thoughts on the movie or something that stood out to you.
Okay, I'll go first. Again, I did hear about this film as it was getting all of its Oscar nominations, and I was like, cinematography, okay, let me see. And I love black and white. So watching this film, even though it is in a different language, it is that shared experience and it's visual storytelling that can really, I don't know, translate to all backgrounds, if that makes sense. And I love how like there's little details when you see the film, and it makes you like, oh wow, I missed that the first time, and I just want to watch it again, honestly. So I really love how everything was shot, the aesthetics and everything.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And, it was a really emotionally powerful movie. And I love the aesthetics of it, like the cinematography, especially. It was, for me, based on like the other films I've seen, it was very unique. And I loved like the camera angles and movements that they used. So I really liked it.
Yeah, specifically going off what you just said, Hannah, I really liked something that I noticed that was very common throughout the film was they used a lot of like the camera would move like in a circular motion, like around, if you know what I mean, which I thought was interesting because a lot of our modern day films, they don't necessarily use that much. It's more of just like cut and like just straight in the next scene instead of having like that cool effect of the.
Um, Riley, it looks like your screen froze. So if you like come back in, you can finish your thought out. But I definitely agree. I think um even watching the way Alfonso Cuarón was like talking about his decision to use this wider frame and have the camera sweeping it, I think it reminded you of like the fact that yes, this story was following the main character Cleo, but it's also kind of reminded you that she's in this world and she's kind of just one person, because sometimes I would find that the camera would stay a little longer after she left to remind you that like there's still a whole world of people there and she's only one person in it. And so I think it reminds you like how many story everyone has their own story really happening at one time, and we just happen to be following her story. But even through following her story, you're seeing the story that the family is going through as well. And so I thought that was so interesting. But while we're on the topic of the visual storytelling, I also think something that was so important to the movie was the audio. And Janelle, I know you're a big fan of film scores, and this film did not have much of a score at all. So, what role do you think film scores play in movies in general? And what did you think of Roma not having one?
That's a good question. The use of sound design, especially, you can see that in examples like film, like A Quiet Place, so that can really immerse the viewer into the film. And it's like, oh, it's like I'm actually in the environment. In my opinion, film scores enhance the film in different aspects. It is like it's not necessary, but it can really bring out emotion. So let's say we're panning in on like a character's face, like an extreme close up. We just see their eyes, like, okay, we see expression there, but music would be like, wait, what are they feeling inside? So it gives the viewer that extra context into a character's emotions.
Yeah, and so I also wanted to talk about the story itself. I think like as a writer, that's what always sticks out to me in movies, but of course with this one it was a little unique because Alfonso Cuarón, the director and writer, said that he really went from memory and he started the movie with no screenplay at all, which I thought was so interesting. So what stood out to me when I watched it was the fact that this movie is a movie about like race and class in a way that I think Americans aren't really used to because it's very different in the American context, but the way that that's in the movie, but it doesn't, it's still grounded in reality and it doesn't lose like its human touch, I really enjoyed. But Hannah, I wanted to ask you, speaking of the stories and the characters, as an actress, what performances stood out to you?
Honestly, it was like the movie made me cry like so much. It was especially the part with Cleo. Um, I think her performance was really powerful. And as an actress, it's like it would be difficult to kind of, for me, to perform like those scenarios because I've never experienced them. So it was really, I think she did a really amazing job with that. And it was so emotional. Like, I was in tears this movie. It was amazing.
And going off that too, not just the acting, but like also just the chemistry that the family had with her, and just like how the children were able to like in certain scenes, like you could tell that like you could just like see the emotion through their acting and like really feel the connection even through the screen. And I thought that was also something that made it really powerful.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, as someone who's not much of an actress, I wonder how much of that is just really great acting and how much of it is like direction and the culture on the set and just the bonds between the actors. And to talk about what Hannah was saying with the main actresses, Yalitza Aparicio, I think her performance, I think is so impressive that before this, she had no acting experience. And
Really?
so, like, for her to just do so great in this film is crazy to me. And then I also think, like Hannah was saying, it was such a sad film and it was devastating at times, but I think in the end, it spoke to like human connection. Like in the end,
Yeah.
her family wasn't there with her, but it was kind of this idea of a chosen family, which I really liked. So I wanted to ask y'all's thoughts on, we were speaking about this earlier, but I think what stands out most is the cinematography and the imagery from the film. And like y'all were saying, they really brought this black and white, which we associate with older films, into the 21st century. So what else did y'all like about the film visually?
Um, just one thing I noticed, I just tend to overanalyze with films, but how usually not usually, I'm sorry. They had a lot of shots of the house like as it was still, and I thought that was really interesting, especially like considering the end when the father took out like all of his stuff. The house seemed very cold and empty, so I think that juxtaposition also just told the story of the house and its place in the family, or like how it interacts with the family in that way. Um, yeah, and also piggyback off of Alfonso in interviews talking about memory, all of that was from memory. So just that, I don't know. Did you know he actually made everything identical to his childhood home? I thought that was interesting. So yeah, also I'm sorry, I really loved it. Like certain camera angles can reinforce power, so especially like the big like shocker like towards the middle of the movie where Fermin the oh gosh, the child's father of Cleo, you can kind of get hints about like what he's actually doing when the man in the military outfit like blows a whistle for them to return all their weapons and stuff. So I didn't notice that till I had to go back, but that just the use of angles like to, I don't know, give the viewers some hints. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I definitely think the way this film was shot was so unique. And the way, like you were saying, he did it from memory and was so particular about the setting. And when you were talking and you said the house played a big part, it reminded me of like a completely opposite movie, but it reminded me of Encanto, because like the house is literally alive, and the way he made it feel like the house was such a big part of this family. Like even when the parents split up, they still stay in the house, but the house changes with the family. I just thought that was so cool. um did anyone else have like any thoughts on the visual aspects of the movie?
I agree. That was really cool. And, you know, watching it, I recently watched it for the very first time. And the first thing I noticed, of course, was the unique cinematography and how at first everything, like when I first started watching it, everything was very centered in the frame and very wide angle, like you mentioned. And like Riley said earlier, a lot of panning shots, which I thought was really unique and really cool. It's sort of, I don't know, for some reason it kind of immersed me. Like it felt like I was in the room with them. I don't know if it was meant to do that, but that's kind of how it made me feel, to be honest.
Yes, and just like the attention to detail, like just like shots that focused on certain items in the house, like the shot where it was like showing the children's toys when she was singing to one of the kids in their room, and like the buckets when they were cleaning, just like every like they would pay attention to every single aspect of the scene and like what was in each room to make you feel, like Hannah said, like you were in the room with them and experiencing like what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think the attention to detail was so incredible to me. Like Janelle said earlier, I watched the documentary where Alfonso was kind of talking about just the film and the direction. And it's crazy how he worked so closely with every person on set. He even was like handpicking extras to make it really seem like you were in the 70s. And I just thought that was so cool. Um, One thing that I wanted to talk about, like as an aspiring screenwriter, was the story itself. We're kind of circling back to what we said earlier, but I just think it was it's such a unique take on a story. And then also like how the characters and social classes within the film built tension. I found that the character who played the mother of the family, it was like sometimes she could be so kind, but then other times she could be so short and so almost cruel with her. And so anytime she was in a scene, especially when she was dealing with something with her husband, you just never knew where that scene was going to go. And because it's like Cleo is of a lower class and she's technically a servant, it's like, is she going to be nice to her? Is she going to be rude to her? And I just felt like that was so interesting, and it kept you on your toes, which is something like you don't really associate with like these like slower dramas like Roma, but I really enjoyed. So I was wondering what y'all thought about the story if we haven't gone there already.
Okay, I'll go. Um, yeah, like going in, I was like, okay, how are they going to treat this like social class divide? But in the end, I really like how it just, I don't know. They seem to have a really strong bond in how they explore that during like different situations as the family transitions through phases and situations. I thought that was an interesting um, dive into just how different classes interact within that like culture or at least that environment. So I thought that was cool. Yeah.
I mean, going to watch the movie for the first time, I thought the story was simple at first, but then I watched it, and then it was like so much deeper than that and like so powerful. And I didn't expect that, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things about this movie. In a way, the story kind of is simple, but it's a collection of moments. I felt it felt
Yeah.
like to me because the movie itself is like an hour and a half, but it takes place over 9 months. And so I wonder, as a director, how do you decide, and as a writer, how do you decide what moments from the 9 months they're going to make up the 90-minute film? Yeah, so um moving on, is there anything y'all would have changed about the movie or anything that you didn't love about it? And let's start with Riley on this one.
Um, Thinking about the movie, I mean, I wouldn't say there's necessarily anything I would change. I honestly really did just like how unique it was compared to everything else I watch in my daily life. Like this is honestly something I would never even think to watch if I wasn't doing this cinematic conversation. So it really was so different from what I'm used to, and I thought it was an interesting way to see how like you said, this is a simple story, and how a different director could have done the exact same script but portrayed it in such a different way. But I think that the way they did it, I think it was just, I just thought it was amazing, and I honestly can't think of something that I would change.
I really loved the movie. I wouldn't change anything about it, but I did have a question to pose to y'all. Um, so two times during the movie, the marching band goes down the street. First time when the dad leaves, and then the second time when the family, after the dad has left, they go up to the house with just without the dad. I was wondering, do y'all have any theories behind the symbolism of the marching band?
I love that question. To me, because we see the marching band kind of go through the street multiple times throughout the movie, so it was probably something that happened every morning. But things like that in movies, just like when something devastating happens, but then an everyday thing happens, it reminds me of how life can be sometimes. Not to be cliche, but like even when terrible things happen, even when your husband leaves you or someone dies, life still moves on. And so I also thought it was a part of the auditory world that they built, because like it's like you hear planes flying over, cars driving by, honking, people in the market yelling. So like the band coming through, it kind of helps build 1970s Mexico City. Did anyone get a chance to look at some of the other films that Alfonso has directed?
Yes, like looking up, I was like, are you kidding me? I love A Little Princess. I don't know, it's a little nostalgia film. And I was like, he did that. So that I was like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, I found that so interesting. For anyone who does not know, he's directed The Little Princess and a few Harry Potter movies and stuff. So this movie was just like such a big departure from anything else he's done. And I remember something that stuck out to me in the documentary. He said, this felt like my first, I would go as far as to say this was my first film because it was the first time that I created something, a film that embodies the kind of cinema I want to create. And I thought that was so interesting. But it also made me think of a question that I've been asking myself, because I think movies like Harry Potter and A Little Princess are a little more fun and childlike. And it's like, I think that there's space for fun in film as well. Like, not everything has to be serious and emotional. Of course, I really appreciate it, and that's the type of film I enjoy. But I just thought it was so interesting that he said that. Oh, do we have questions in the chat?
We do have some chat messages. I'm not sure about questions, but feel free to welcome everyone in the chat. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here and watching this stream.
Someone said, did you know that the scene when they are eating with the train is all shot in the studio?
Oh, really? I did not know that.
I did not know.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Did not know. Wow. Also there's a lot of symbolism in this film. Like I said, it's like one of the good films to like look back, like watch again and watch again and like look in the details because he put a lot of attention to detail to make this as like from his memories as possible. And so y'all mentioned the planes going by. You can see it in like an opening credit scene, like while she's like washing the ground, like the reflection. I thought that was really cool. And the plane goes by, and then it happens at the end. I believe I did research, and it was talking about like a larger world that Cleo like is like out of her reach. It's like far away from her in that way, just because like her and like her life is like surrounded by the domestic, almost like she's tied to the house in some way. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought, oh, no, Hannah, you go.
Oh, you're fine.
Well, I just want to say really quickly, I think that what you said about her being tied to this role in this domestic work is one of the things that kind of, I think, like, yes, it was a somewhat happy ending, or bittersweet ending, but also it's like, if she weren't a domestic worker, what else could she have been? What potential could she have had? What other lives could she have lived? So I think it's so interesting. And like movies leave you with that kind of mystery. Like it's not like a TV show. Like you don't get a flash 10 years into the future. Usually you don't get like a complete picture of what happens to this character. So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, I was wondering about like the beginning and ending shots when the credits play. So that kind of answers my question about it because, the beginning, the opening shot, it's like the grounds, and she's cleaning, and like Janelle said, the reflections of the planes, and then the ending shot is like the sky with the planes going through it. And I was like, did that mean something? Like, I have a feeling this means something.
Oh, also the plane showed up during Fermin's like training while she was there trying to talk to him. Like during a thing, like in the background, you can see the plane. So I don't know. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's actually a scene that I wanted to talk about, the whole scene with Fermin and the field and them kind of being in the big field. one moment that stuck out to me was when he's like putting his arms up and he's balancing with just one leg, and everyone's kind of struggling to do the balancing act thing, but Cleo does it so effortlessly. What did y'all think of that moment?
I mean, I noticed it and I had a feeling that it would mean something, but I haven't thought much about it. So I'd love to hear like your opinions on it because I noticed it and I was thinking about it a bit, but not thoroughly yet.
Or your thoughts on that scene as a whole, because a lot happened in that scene. Um, yeah, so I'll let y'all talk about that because it was a bit of a turning point in the movie and just the relationship with Fermin as a whole.
Yeah, like when we first see him, I thought he was like, oh, he's just so quirky, like, oh, he likes to do martial arts, but it takes a real dark turn in what like his true motives are. And yeah, that I was like, uh I was really shocked when, oh my God. Yeah, when it was a lot has happened, but like I said, I guess Alfonso, because he also is the cinematographer, which I think is cool to be a director and cinematographer. But he gives a lot of visual clues, like I said, in the use of camera angles and different shots to kind of give the viewers some hints about like maybe not all is right with him. I mean, he did leave her. It's real messed up, and then yeah. So I think we got some clues about his true character.
I'd actually love to hear more about what shots you think were clues into him.
Yeah, so it's really okay. There are a lot of wide shots. The use of a low angle typically means like it gives the person or the subject that the main subject in frame low angle. It's like you're looking up to the person, which means that in the power dynamic, they have more power in that scene. It's kind of weird, like in contrast with Cleo's shots. It was just like straight on, kind of looking up or looking down. So I just may like, oh, I'm sorry. We may do a deeper dive later just to talk about how different camera shots can establish power dynamic in film. And yeah, even in the script, I think there was one quote like, "Is it for the Olympics?" Cleo said like during that scene after he's done training, and he said something like that. And oh my gosh, it's just really dark from there. Like once you know everything that happened. So yeah, I think there were a lot of clues, especially. Oh my God, yeah. And
Yeah, I agree with you.
Riley, I'd love to know your thoughts on um like the character of Fermin and just the story between what happened to them and even what happened in the furniture store, which I think was so shocking. But what did you think about that?
Um, you know, I don't really. I was shocked. I mean, it's just. I think that a lot of different views of it can be taken. It's sort of up to interpretation in terms of. I think there's different perspectives of Fermin because, of course, in the beginning he seems like this fun-loving guy and, like you said, kind of quirky. And I feel like there wasn't a lot of attention necessarily put on like maybe like sort of why he became the way that he was or um, things like that. And I don't know, it's kind of a hard question. Um, I still don't even really know how I feel about the character for Mean. It's just, I don't know.
I'd like to mention something in the chat. Edgar said that low angles sometimes inspire fear versus high shots where it shows intimidation. Um, so he's agreeing with what Janelle said. I wanted to ask because I guess like cinematography and cameras and stuff, they're not my wheelhouse. But what I saw in the film was more just leveled shots where we didn't see very dramatic changes in the angles of the shots, especially when we were looking at the characters. So like were there more subtle ways that y'all saw the shots and stuff portraying or being almost a part of the story or conveying the story?
Yeah, I agree. There were a lot of wide shots, but when they wanted to like hint like, okay, you should probably pay attention to this character, that's when I saw like a shift of balance between like, eye level and low level and everything. Um yeah, like also wide angle like gives the viewer a lot more information. Like there's a lot of things going on. So that kind of just further immerses the viewer into the film itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
And it keeps you on your toes because you never know what to expect. So I think that's kind of a fun thing too, because you're just like, it's constantly moving and constantly like keeping you engaged. So I think that's a great way to keep audiences engaged, just to be constantly changing those camera angles to keep you just like entertained, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and definitely about what Janelle said about the angle, letting you see that there's a lot going on. One particular part that I remember is kind of when she's leaving out of the furniture store with the grandmother and they're coming out, and as they're leaving you see a woman on the ground and she's holding this man who's like dying, and like you see like all this chaos in the streets, and she's just kind of walking by because she's going into labor, and the camera just lingers there. So I think that was, I was trying to think of an example from earlier when I was talking about the camera lingering, just like reminds you that yes, you're watching a story about particular characters, but there's so much else going on in the background. And I also think what Riley said earlier about not really understanding, like more could have been done to let you know what was happening with Fermin. I think definitely it will be so interesting to get a closer look at that character and that character arc. And we are welcoming someone on the Zoom right now. Raul, we saw you in the chat talking about some of the cinematography from Roma. I'll let you introduce yourself real quick. Oh, you're muted.
All right. Yeah. Hi, I'm Raul Torresi. I'm Roman, first of all. So my family also is in the family business from 1935. Is in the film business. So my grandmother, that started in 1935, when she was 9 years old, she was collecting hairs from the brushes to build wigs at 9 years old. So she gave the hair to the older sister that were 12 and 14 to build wigs in laboratory. And then at 18, she was on set and she made lots of movies. She made 4 movies with Fellini as a hairdresser, but not Roma. She made Satyricon, Casanova, I Vitelloni, that is the second one. I don't know the English name. And also Ginger and Fred. That was the last she did, yeah, with Fellini. And so I know some story of Roma, the movie, because I was working as assistant camera with people that were on set. And for the Colosseum scene, there were a week of preparation, because for each of the arc, there is a enormous light of 10,000 watt.
Wow.
And they had to connect all with different electronic groups and electronic generators. And they didn't have so many in Rome, because these generators were alimented by gas. So they had this generator coming from other cities, even to power all the light. Nowadays, we don't think anymore about the lighting as an issue, because in digital, you can see even in the dark, basically. But that time, the film was just 100 ISO. And so to lighting 100 ISO was a completely different deal than today. And so I heard from an electrician that was on set that after they put all the lights, after was all ready to shoot, the director of photography, that is Giuseppe Rotunno, that he died 2 years ago, actually. He said, "Oh, I want more orange in the lights." And so they stopped shooting, because at that time, to have more orange in the lights, you need to build a frame with a gel and put for each light in each arch a gel with more orange. So, I mean, nowadays we have a switcher to change color, temperature of the lights. Everything, it's different. But at that time, that was the thing. And they had, I think, 20 electricians to work in the lighting of that scene. So that's an episode that came then very famous on different sets to remember about. And so I wanted to share that. Then I don't know if you know Anna Magnani. It's the actress that was in Rome Open City. The famous scene that she ran after the husband is get from the Nazis, and she's killed by the Nazis, and that this is the famous scene of that movie, and she is also in Rome at the closing of the film, when she said to Fellini, "A Federi vaffanculo," that means "fuck you, Fellini." So she said to him, and then closed the door. That's the last scene of the Roma film, if you remember. But I don't know if you recently watched that. I saw that movie many years ago. I have some remembrance of the movie. Another thing is like the first scene when they are in the restaurant and there is the train passing down. The restaurant is outside. That is, all of that is in a studio, inside a studio. It's not like a real city. So they build completely all the buildings and the train passing, and they build everything in a studio. That is the It's called Theater Number 5, Studio Number 5. In Italian, we say theater for studio. So Teatro Cinque was the biggest studio in Europe until some years ago, when they did a biggest in London, and so they had all this space that was covered basically to recreate a square with the buildings and everything. So I just want for you to figure out, if you see the movie or if you recently see the movie, to think about how different it was should a movie done today that maybe is all digital and recreate by virtual, and instead at that time was all recreate in studio instead to go in the real city. And Fellini did that because he started as a neorealism side, so he started shooting in real plays and everything, especially the film La Strada, that was a poor movie compared the time, because the second movie was a flop to him. So when he did La Strada, the street, he didn't have any money, and so my grandmother refused that movie because there was no money. But that movie won then the first Oscar for Fellini. So then, I mean, when I reminded her, she died 3 years ago. When I reminded her about that movie, she was so upset because she refused the movie because the money, but then the movie won the Oscar. So some way she was very upset of that.
Thank you so much. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And can you remind us of your work with the Pegasus Media Project?
Yeah, I work with Nilo for 4 seasons to realize a series of short movies, and we did in 4 years. We did 14, I think, and then they were projected. Even some of them were projected to Pegasus later. But Pegasus, I think Pegasus started when we were on the 3rd year. So the first 2 years wasn't Pegasus there, but so we project in other places. Yeah, so I work with Nilo as a mentor on set to realize the short movies. They are right now all online. I mean, what I did with her is online on my YouTube channel under my name. And you go to Booker T. Washington playlist if you want to watch them. And there is also 4 behind the scenes, very good to see the process. And there are trailers of the shorts, like 30 seconds trailer. Yeah, so we did this very nice project with the students from high school. They were like junior to go when we realized the short to go to senior. So they had the scholarship for the college. Yeah.
Oh, that is so interesting. Thank you so much for joining us and letting us know all those cool facts that we definitely wouldn't have known ourselves. I guess I just want to ask like everyone's closing thoughts, something that is gonna stay with you, and wrap up from there. And I guess I'll start. I think this movie is like, yes, sad and emotional, which may turn some people off from it, but I think it's ultimately a movie about human connection and the human experience, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, one thing that's going to stick with me, especially in like future narrative projects, is to play with like the audience like perception of like what they can see and interpret from that. So I really appreciate all the symbolism that was displayed in this film. So I think that's kind of inspiring for future filmmakers or to just take more consideration into the details and how everything looks in terms of like camera or even just props that you would have. So I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah, and honestly, for me, it was really inspiring to see the sort of unique cinematography and feel of the movie because as like an aspiring filmmaker, a lot of things are like you should only do this with the camera. Like you can't do this with the camera. Like and there are a lot of like rules for cinematography. And I think as long as you think about using it to tell the story, like Roma did, that you can really, it's up to like the director's vision for the camera, which was really inspiring to me because, Roma didn't necessarily follow all of the rules that I've read in like guides for cinematography. So, yeah, that was really inspiring to me.
Yeah, and like we've been saying, it was just so unique from um, modern day films. And I think that this will definitely inspire me to go out of my comfort zone and not watch the films that I'm used to watching and try to find more films like this that are just so different than what I'm used to and just get more. And honestly, if anything, it makes me more excited to try to find more films that I would otherwise not want to or not know about. And I think I'll definitely be watching more works that are like this and by the same director. And I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, I agree with everything y'all said. There's so much to learn from this movie and so much to gain from watching movies and shows that are different than what you usually watch. And I like to thank all of you for joining us. And I like to thank everyone in the live stream right now for joining us. And yeah.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Have an amazing day. And make sure to subscribe to the Pegasus YouTube channel and follow our other social media accounts for more content like this and more cinematic convos coming up. You can also hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button to get notified when we have a new video or a live stream. But thank you all again, and see you later.